Welcome to episode 10. I am the Falcon.
And I am the dove.
Welcome. We have a busy week. All sorts of crazy things going on. Some of them good, some of them not so good. For those of you who are college-bound students waiting to hear from your favorite Ivies this weekend to see whether or not you were accepted or not. For those of you who are accepted, a hearty congratulations. For those of you who weren't accepted, don't feel bad. You were probably one among 10, 20, or 30,000 rejection letters that went out. Do not take this as a personal reflection on your character. After all, they only got so much room. So, go to those excellent number 2, 3, 4, or 5 schools that you had. I've been hearing a lot of this, Dove. But the average college student who's applying for schools this year, how many schools are they applying to? Have you heard?
Nowadays, 5 to 15.
That's what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing the average is like 6 to 8. And there are quite a few, especially the ones who were going for Ivies.
Well, it's good to apply to a lot.
I think so too.
Just not 45.
Yeah. We're making reference to a fact that there was a kid, I won't say where he was interviewing at the time, who actually last year applied for like 45 schools because he didn't think he was going to get in anywhere. But as you all find out, you do get in somewhere. You do get in. There is a school for you. There is a good match. Like I said, if you didn't get in to your favorite Ivy this week, or just school that you were waiting until late March, early April to hear from, next week or so over the spring, Easter, Passover break, it's going to be kind of crazy. Kids are anticipating those, and then parents anticipating the dun financial aid packages.
Yeah, I applied to 9, so I'm right in the middle, kind of.
Right in the middle of it, and
I applied to 9.
A lot of paperwork to sit down and look over. So
9's a good number.
There was a good number, so everything good. I want to give you guys an update on something we talked about last week.
The pet food.
Pet
update.
food.
Dry cat food has now been added to the list of contaminated pet food, and we've gotten some updates here also on what else they found.
As we reported last week, New York State and, of course, Cornell University had done some testing on the food itself and on the wheat gluten itself. And it's important to differentiate between the two. And had found aminoteparin, which is a form of rat poisoning, not used in the U.S., but it is used in China and other places, was detected last week. The FDA couldn't confirm that this week, but what they did say was the food they tested had melamine in it, and that's a plastic. And of course, it's used in making plastics, and
not good.
Not good. It's also used in fertilizer in China. So let's see if we can follow this through. Some stuff that was picked up in China from a new source, a new supplier, was mixed in with the dog food in Canada and distributed throughout Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. Oh boy. They are now looking at dry cat food. Just cat food right now, but they're now looking at it. So now there has been a recall on Hill's Pet Nutrition prescription diet M/D, don't know what that means, feline dry cat food.
Yeah,
if you
MD,
have it,
MD,
you know what that means. This is Hill's Pet Nutrition Prescription Diet, Feline Dry Cat Food.
MD. M/D.
The food included wheat gluten from the same supplier that Menu Foods used. The recall didn't involve any other prescription diet or science diet products, said the company, a division of Colgate-Palmolive Company. Now,
Colgate and Palmolive are together?
Yeah, that happened.
Colgate as in the toothpaste?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
As they joined many years ago.
Palmolive.
Yeah, all the Palmolive products. Now, as you may or may not know, the FDA is saying right now they can't necessarily say that melamine is what caused urinary failure, but we do know that melamine as a plastic is made with part of the manufacturing process, formaldehyde, which we do know is a carcinogen. For sure, can cause big problems.
It smells terrible.
And, that too. Yeah. And so it wouldn't be surprising that you would have animals having a reaction. this is the second full week of this chaos and stupidity, and I
it's
know
only the
that
second week. It feels like 3.
It really does.
It feels like the 3rd week.
It really does, and
it's terrible.
Just to all those pet owners out there who may have lost a dear friend, our deepest sympathy. For those of you who have a friend who is now in the veterinarian's office ill or being kept overnight for tests, we really hope that everything comes out all right for them. And our prayers are with you, because we all know when you lose a pet, whether you have children or not, or whether this is your pet that goes out with you on the beach in the morning or is waiting for you when you get home, they're a family member. And it is causing everybody to take a serious look at how we package our foods, how we look at where ingredients are coming from and when they're added to the what and where and how.
And I'm glad that the media is paying a lot of attention to this issue, because a lot of people won't run a story like this unless it affects humans.
And make sure that, yes, because it could affect humans.
Because dogs and cats are humans too.
Yes.
Let's just say it.
They're special too.
They're very special.
The numbers could go quite high. So, if you have been to a veterinarian, make sure that your veterinarian reports this to the FDA, reports it to any of the number of veterinarian organizations, because they're trying to keep an accurate count of the number of animals who have been sickened or passed away.
There have been 8,000 complaints.
Yes.
About kidney failure or liver failure, and over 100 have died. Maybe even more. And they're trying to keep as accurate a count as possible. So make sure that your veterinarian, or call the FDA directly and say, hey, I want you to know that I lost a pet, or I want you to know that my pet is sick. I have an aunt whose pet was affected, so I can tell you that this is very trying and very upsetting. So we wanted to make sure we touched on that again. Keep up with the information from Menu Foods. Keep going to the website and checking out updates. So we're going to leave that sad point alone and then move to another story. We're going to talk about homework. Is homework good for you? That's probably subject to debate. Well, there are those who feel that homework is not good for you. As a matter of fact, there's one doctor. His name's Alfie Kohn. He has a book called The Homework Myth. And he says doing homework actually doesn't help students at all, especially younger than high school. Now, I think I know where he might be going with this, because, if you're in school all day and then you come home and you're doing, 2 hours of homework at night, 3 hours of homework at night, the kid's exhausted. And if you have any planned extracurricular activities, before you know it, the kid's up way past their bedtime, and then you start the whole process all over again. And 5 solid days a week of that. Burn out. 9 months of the year. Oh my gosh. Closer to 10. Older kids, more homework, longer hours, and then eventually, you get to college and you're just like, okay, I'm already too tired to lift a pencil. So I kind of see where he's going with that. That's why a lot of people don't go to college. That's one of the reasons why. But I have nothing against homework. It's just that sometimes it's just too much.
Yeah, sometimes it can be over the top.
It's too much. If you're doing it for 3, 4, 5 hours, that's too much. 1 to 2 hours is reasonable. Maybe 3 during finals or test week or something.
Yeah, getting ready for a test.
But this is ridiculous for 4, 5, 6 hours and not being able to do anything else or take any breaks because you're afraid you're not going to get it done.
Well, Alfie Kohn says, Homework Myth, read his book. That's Kohn. Check it out and see what he says about it. And see if research supports that doing homework actually makes for a better student. I don't know.
So doing less homework makes for a better student?
Yeah, some people think doing more homework makes a better student. Some feel doing less makes a better student. Apparently he presents some pretty decent arguments. So I'd like to see what happens with that.
Our work is always homework.
Yes. That's one thing about the homeschooler. You don't have to waste a lot of time.
All our work is homework.
Telling people, sit down, be quiet, stop kissing, passing notes to your boyfriend. Put the cell phone away. You know, all that time is taken up with, okay, now what are we going to do today? You can even keep on your favorite fuzzy slippers. It's great. For those of you who've actually considered being homeschooled and have wanted to run to your parents and say, please homeschool me, I can tell you that from a parent's perspective, it is a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. It keeps your schedule, you know, people think, oh, homeschool, it is regimented. I mean, I don't want to say that it's not regimented and there isn't a lot of paperwork. There is. As a parent, you have to be rather diligent at making sure you've got everything in order, that you stay to your curriculum, particularly if you're using your curriculum and not somebody's online and not, necessarily the same textbook from the school district.
And for all those people who think that homeschoolers have no social life, it's a lie.
Yeah, you have more social life if nothing else.
Yeah, you have more social life. They're like, oh, they're going to be so introverted and they're not going to stay in their shell and not do anything outside. No, it's wrong.
Right, Dove, you're such an introvert, you know. I mean, you really got to come out of your shell a little.
Oh, yeah.
I think not.
Not shy at all. And it depends on the person. Obviously, some people are shy, but they're going to be shy whether they're homeschooled or not. So.
Yes. But what it does do in homeschooling is there's very little, what I would call, quote, homework. Because you're doing the work right there.
Because you get so much work done.
Yeah, you get so much work done.
You get it done right there.
I mean, she's doing the work, I grade the work, we're done. It's not an issue.
And then I do more scholarships.
Yeah, it's one advantage of homeschooling. You have more time for scholarship
activity.
More
time to do those scholarships.
I have no idea how we would have gotten through doing all those scholarships.
Fastweb.com.
Fastweb.com. You know, eventually we're going to go to them and say, you need to pay us. No, just kidding. No, fastweb.com. Fastweb.com.
We're going to keep saying it. We're going to keep saying it.
It's where you go for all your free scholarship needs.
Free scholarships. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't do those scholarships.
Yes, and those are scholarships you look up, you are eligible, your child is eligible for, and that you have instigated interest in. If you get emails, you know the kind I mean, the kind that go to your junk mail and say, hey, you're in a scholarship sweepstakes. It's probably a ripoff. Yeah. I mean, there may be real ones out there, but I've never heard of one.
Read the fine print. Read the privacy policy that they put really small at the bottom of the page. Always read that. Some of them require that you be over 18 because they want your credit card or something like that. Or
they're phishing.
If you have to be over 18, then it's crap. And if it's, especially if it's really flashy and stuff, then that's obviously stupid.
Watch out for. And let me tell you, high school kids, as soon as you turn 18, the number of offers to get you deep into credit card purgatory will be racing into your email box and your mailbox.
Yes.
Don't do it.
And I'm trying to prepare myself because I turn 18 this week.
Yay.
Yay. This Thursday.
Don't do it.
I'll probably get 1 million credit cards in there, and I'm going to throw them all away.
That's it. Cut it up into little pieces. Go.
You can use it with playing cards to make a card castle.
That's it. Just throw
That's
them
all you can
away.
use them for. And then when you're done with them, cut them up. Yes, don't just throw them away. Cut them up because someone else could use them.
Cut them up into little pieces because somebody else
might
try to use it and ruin your good name.
And identity fraud, and you don't want that. So cut them up too. That's to protect yourself.
Now, here's something, we talk a lot about the environment on this show, and we've talked a good bit about global warming, and I ran across this week. The article was actually printed on the day that I was looking for it, which was really, really strange. And I know many of you out there saw The Day After Tomorrow several years ago, and there was a lot of discussion about how much of that was actually possible that could happen versus how much of it really couldn't happen, and there was a lot of bantering back and forth. And remember, a lot of what was in The Day After Tomorrow was based on things that had already happened. If you remember, the Dennis Quaid's character was actually a paleontologist, though he was looking at things that had happened in the past, weather conditions that had happened in the past, environmental conditions, how we had gotten locked into previous ice ages, about 10,000 BC, and then there was another one at about 8,400 BC, and how they came up and what happened and how the Atlantic current, the Atlantic conveyor belt, shut off. Well, this might be a bit interesting to all the listeners who thought that maybe, I think everyone should have to watch An Inconvenient Truth, Happy Feet, which I call The Inconvenient Truth, the musical, and also great for children, and The Day After Tomorrow together. Because there's enough valid information in The Day After Tomorrow that people should see it. Well,
there's more fact than fiction.
Yeah, remember all that discussion about the Atlantic current and freshwater and saltwater ratio? And
that's not
it could
fiction.
Shut off? Not fiction.
Not fiction.
It actually happened. It happened just 2 years ago. For 10 days, it shut off. Ironically, the 10 days just prior to the month and a half of the worst hurricane season ever experienced. Coincidence? I doubt it. Now, for some reason, it took this long for them to actually find out that it shut off, but it did. Dove, give them the whole story.
Scientists have uncovered more evidence for a dramatic weakening in the vast ocean current that gives Britain its relatively balmy climate by dragging warm water northwards from the tropics. The slowdown, which climate modelers have predicted will follow global warming, has been confirmed by the most detailed study yet of ocean flow in the Atlantic. This article is from Guardian Unlimited. Most alarmingly, the data reveal that a part of the current, which is usually 60 times more powerful than the Amazon River, came to a temporary halt during November 2004. The nightmare scenario of a shutdown in the ocean current, which drives the Gulf Stream, was dramatically portrayed in The Day After Tomorrow. The climate disaster film had Europe and North America plunged into a new ice age practically overnight. Although no scientist thinks the switch-off could happen that quickly, they do agree that even a weakening of the current over a few decades could have profound consequences. Warm water brought to Europe's shores raises the temperature by as much as 10 degrees Celsius in some places, and without it, the continent would be much colder and drier. Researchers are not sure yet what to make of the 10-day hiatus. We've never seen anything like that before, and we don't understand it. We don't know it could happen, said Harry Bryden at the National Oceanography Center in Southampton, who represented the findings to a conference in Birmingham on rapid climate change. Is it the first sign that the current is stuttering to a halt? I want to know more before I say that, Professor Bryden said. Lloydon Kygwin, a scientist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts in the U.S., described the temporary shutdown as, quote, the most abrupt change in the whole climate record, end quote. He added, quote, it only lasted 10 days, but suppose it lasted 30 or 60 days when you ring up the Prime Minister and say, let's start stockpiling fuel. How can we rule out a longer one next year? Professor Biden's group stunned climate researchers last year with data suggesting that the flow rate of the Atlantic circulation had dropped by about 6 million tons of water a second from 1957 to 1998. If the current remained that weak, he predicted, it would lead to a 1 degree Celsius drop in the UK in the next decade. A complete shutdown would lead to a 4 to 6 degrees Celsius cooling over 20 years. The study prompted the UK's Natural Environment Research Council to set up an array of 16 submerged stations spread across the Atlantic from Florida to North Africa to measure flow rate and other variables at different depths. Data from these stations confirmed the slowdown in 1998 was not a quote-unquote freak observation, although the current does seem to have picked up slightly since.
So we had a slowdown in 98. It shut off in 2004, right before a really bad 2005 season started. That doesn't make me happy. So, average person's going, okay, did I really need to know that? Other than terrifying me, what should I do? Okay, this was not done to merely terrify you. It was done to present solutions. We know this. We know it can happen. We know it has happened. No longer fantasy or to conjecture. It's happened. So, what do we need to do? First of all, if you're a homeowner, you need to seriously start thinking about alternative fuels to run that house. Okay? Now, I love that Connie Mae thing that Al Gore's talking about. We don't have it in place yet, but you should always have more than one way to heat your home if you can afford to do that. If you're a renter, say to your landlord, an investment in solar panels or a windmill, and you can, yes, attach a little windmill to an apartment building, because even if the sun isn't shining, the wind is still going to be blowing, in order to generate electricity, just in case you have something happen that could adversely affect your weather for a little while. Should you be thinking about this seriously? Yeah, because if you can put something in place now, or start working toward putting something in place and making sure that you're raising your children and grandchildren with the idea of always have two forms of heat, always have an alternative form of energy. Think about green energy. They may be the ones who need it most. Of course, we may need it too. So, investigate it. I'm seriously investigating and a little windmill for myself. Why? Because wind energy can be sold back to the electric company, because wind's always blowing. Wind and solar work best together.
Yep, we talked about this last week.
We talked about this.
Windmill kits.
And, just take a look at it. It's not that expensive. It's worth checking into, certainly in a slow buying market and the housing market. Anything that's going to save new homeowners big bucks on those adjustable rate mortgages. Ugh. Those adjustable arms. Yeah. Because they're changing rapidly right along with the interest rate. If you're going to go into that kind of debt, spend the money where it's going to do you the most amount of good. On conserving energy, on alternative fuels, and on being ready for the worst case scenario. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yep. And that article was by James Randerson, science correspondent from Guardian Unlimited.
There we go. That was worth bringing up, just in case. That blew my mind when I heard it actually shut off for 10 days. I went, what?
What? That was scary. That was scary.
Oh, yes. Income too high for tax credits? Give the break to your kid. Now, I am income tax knowledge challenged. I will be the first to admit it. But this sounded pretty cool to me. If you can't take the income tax break, make sure that your student can take the income tax break. Since we're rapidly approaching April 15th, which this year I believe it's due April 17th. I did mine already. Don't hate me. I already did it because I have to do those things. Otherwise, I go crazy.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about them. I want to get them over with. So, when to give your kid a tax break?
This is from MSN Money. Thank you. By Smart Money. Even if your income is too high for the IRS education credits, here's how to use the rules to cut your college-age offspring's taxes. Plus other education tax breaks. If you earn a healthy income, then you probably don't qualify for the higher education tax credits intended to help pay college tuition bills. That's the bad news. The good news is your college-age child may be able to claim one of the credits instead. Both the Hope Scholarship credit, maximum $1,650, and the Lifetime Learning credit, maximum $2,000, help soften the cost of post-secondary education. The Hope credit is available only for the first 2 years of college, but the Lifetime Learning credit can be used at any time and doesn't have a degree or workload requirement. Now, how these tax credits work. Unfortunately, you can't take both credits for the same student in the same year, and many parents earn too much to be eligible for either one. That's because for tax year 2006, both credits are phased out starting at an adjusted gross income, or AGI, of $90,000 for joint filers and $45,000 for singles. At AGI levels of $110,000 and $55,000 respectively, you're completely ineligible. As you might imagine, tons of parents fall into this category, but even if you're among them, these valuable credits may not have to go to waste. Here's how. Arrange things so your college-age child can claim one of these credits instead of you. To implement this strategy, you must forego the dependency exemption deduction for your child, $3,300 for the 2006 tax year. Then the education tax credit becomes the property of your child, whose income is presumably well below the phase-out range. The low liberated education credit can cut your college-age child's tax bill by quite a bit. Remember, however, the credit is worthless to your child unless he or she has enough taxable income to actually own the Internal Revenue Service. This income could be from summer jobs or work study at school, or income and gains from investments held in your child's name. Also, keep in mind that this strategy makes the most sense when your AGI is quite high. Why? Because your dependency write-off for your college kid is itself partly phased out between an AGI of $225,750 and $348,250 for joint filers, and between $150,500 and $273,000 for single filers. So giving up that dependency deduction on your 2006 tax return may not cost you much. This strategy does not permit your child to claim an exemption on his or her return. The exemption belongs to you whether you're able to use it or not. On the other hand, if you're still fully eligible for the dependency exemption, you should probably claim it and pass on this strategy, even though it may mean seeing the education credit go down the drain. Washington has delivered some valuable tax breaks over the past few years to parents trying to foot those bills. Here's a rundown of what's available. $4,000 or $2,000 deduction, and Coverdell Education Savings Accounts, or CESAs.
We're going to talk about CESAs in upcoming weeks, but make sure you talk to your tax professional or IRS contact before you file your taxes this year. And the bottom line is, if you're getting that tax deduction of $3,300, you may not want to use the HOPE or the Earned Income Tax Credit that applies directly to education in that first 2 years. You may not. You need to talk to somebody and make sure your student's making enough that credit's going to do them some good. If the student's only making a couple $1,000s, obviously, it's not going to do them any good. You want your biggest deduction possible. That's the key. So you're going to have to look at those and see if one benefits you more than the other. Now, if you have more than one kid, one kid can get the HOPE credit and one kid can get the lifetime learning credit. Or if you have a kid who's already had those credits for the first 2 years on the HOPE, and now they can use a lifetime learning credit in their junior year, and maybe you have a kid about to become a freshman in college, well, then you get to do all of it, as long as they have part-time jobs or work study that's making enough money that they can use those credits to their advantage. If they aren't, you might just be better keeping your earned income tax credit for the kids and letting the other one go. Don't forget, parents, that earned income tax credit for lifetime learning, the lifetime learning credit, means lifetime. So there is a cap of $2,000. But if you've taken a couple courses lately, you may be able to deduct that depending upon your tax situation. Talk to your tax professional. That would be pretty cool, huh?
Okay. This is an interesting story. I found this last week.
Yeah, I'm looking at that one. I'm just going, okay, this is just weird.
But we like weird.
But we love weird.
We love weird. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is from MSN Slate. From the Human Nature section. It's called Full Mental Nudity.
It's not what you think.
Not what you think.
No,
It's just called that. The Arrival of Mind-Reading Machines. This is by William Saletant.
Thank you, William, for this mind-boggling opportunity.
Years ago, Woody Allen used to joke that he'd been thrown out of college as a freshman for cheating on his metaphysics final. Quote, "I looked within the soul of the boy sitting next to me," he confessed. Today, the joke is on us. Cameras follow your car, GPS tracks your cell phone, software monitors your web surfing, X-rays explore your purse, and airport scanners see through your clothes. Now comes the final indignity. Machines that look into your soul. With the aid of functional magnetic resonance imaging, neuroscientists have been hard at work on Allen's fantasy. Under controlled conditions, they can tell from a brain scan which of two images you're looking at. They can tell whether you're thinking of a face, an animal, or a scene. They can even tell which finger you're about to move. But those feats barely scratch the brain's surface. Any animal can perceive objects and move limbs. To plumb the soul, you need a metaphysician. John Dylan Haynes, a brilliant researcher at Germany's Bernstein Center for Computational Neuroscience, is leading the way. His mission, according to the center, is to predict thoughts and behavior from fMRI scans. Haynes, a former philosophy student, is going for the soul's jugular. He's trying to clarify the physical basis of free will. Quote, "Why do we shape intentions in this way or another way?" he wonders. Your wishes, your desires, your goals, your plans, that's the core of your identity. The best place to look for that core is in the brain's medial prefrontal cortex, which, he points out, is especially involved in the initiation of willed movements and their protection against interference. To get a clear snapshot of free will, Haynes designed an experiment that would isolate it from other mental functions. No objects to interpret, no physical movements to anticipate or execute, no reasoning to perform. Participants were put in an fMRI machine and were told that they would soon be shown the word select, followed by a few seconds later by two numbers. Their job was to covertly decide, when they saw the select cue, whether to add or subtract the unseen numbers. Then they were to perform the chosen calculation and punch a button corresponding to the correct answer. The snapshot was taken right after the select cue, when they had nothing to do but choose addition or subtraction. Until this experiment, which was reported last month in Current Biology, nobody had ever tried to take a picture of free will. One reason is that fMRI is too crude to distinguish one abstract choice from another. It can only show which parts of the brain are demanding blood oxygen. That's too coarse to distinguish the configuration of cells that signifies addition from the configuration that signifies subtraction. So Haynes used software to help the computer recognize complex patterns in the data. To dissect human thought, the computer had to emulate it. Each participant took the test more than 250 times, choosing it independently in each trial. The computer then looked at a sample of the scans along with the final answers that revealed what choices had actually been made. It calculated a pattern and used this pattern to predict, from each participant's remaining scans, his or her decisions in the corresponding trials. Haynes checked the predictions, add or subtract, against the participants' answers, and the computer got it right 71% of the time.
Okay, it's a 71% mind-reading machine, and only if you have two choices.
Right now, yeah.
Right now. It's rather rudimentary, if you ask me. And besides, you can only use that machine to calculate free will, and, in fact, if someone has actually made up their mind. What if they haven't made up their mind? Or what if they just suddenly, spontaneously, just pick something? Mm-hmm. Will it anticipate their spontaneity? Or is their picking something spontaneously, or what appears to be spontaneous, actually predestined karma? Or predictive dharma, because they are merely following what they're supposed to be following. How in the world do we know that it's really reading their mind, or their soul, or their karma? We don't. All we know is that it's going to read whatever's going on in that cortex 50% of the time. I don't know.
Right.
I think we're a long way from that.
Yeah, we're a long way from that, but the point of the article is that of where this may become useful. Is that first it says, why would anyone want a machine to read his mind? But imagine being paralyzed, unable to walk, type, or speak. Imagine a helmet full of electrodes or a chip implanted in your head that lets your brain tell your computer which key to press. Those technologies are already here. And why endure the agony of mental hunt and peck? Why not design computers that, like a smart secretary, can discern and execute even abstract intentions? That's what Haynes has in mind. You want to open a folder or an email, and your computer does it. Your wish is its command. But if machines can read your mind when you want them to, they can also read it when you don't. And your will isn't necessarily the one they obey. Already, scans have been used to identify brain signatures of disgust, drug cravings, unconscious racism, not to mention psychopathy, and propensity to kill.
Nice. Yeah, that's a little too much information, isn't it?
And it goes on and on and on.
Hey,
but
will it benefit us? I think it's a great idea if we're using that tool as something that can help someone who's handicapped do what they need to do. I don't think it needs to be used like a lazy remote of a person thinking, I need my TV to go to channel 271 and then have it go to channel 271. I think there's a line where it's appropriate or when it's just absolutely frightening. And again, I still think that, I don't think everyone thinks the same way. Obviously, we have certain parts of the brain for specific tasks, but we also know that certain individuals can use their brains to do those tasks differently. And we also know that people can be audio or olfactory sentient, where there are people who smell musical notes or who, you know, between the eyes and ear there lie the sound of color, the light of a sigh, as the Moody Blues once said. Isn't that the way it goes, Graham? To hear the sun, but what a thing to believe, but it's all around us if we could but perceive. I'm an old Moody Blues fan. They rock. But there's a point. There are people who are wired that way.
I forget what they call them. Sensory something. It mixes the senses up.
Exactly.
And how they can.
So people who mix olfactory and
how they can
audio.
They can hear color or smell color or something like that.
Or smell sound and things like that. People who are ambidextrous, whose brains may be able to actually divide and work
I don't know if that machine would work on them.
I don't know.
Or it could be the exact opposite. It could actually work better. But we don't know. We haven't seen it tested.
I think there would have to be a narrowing down of finite functions in order to determine even the most rudimentary, much less abstract concept. I just think we're a long way off. And I don't know if we could train a machine to do that. I mean, after all, we can't train people to anticipate what people are going to do.
What they did there was do a test a bunch of times and it detected a pattern. And
for those people.
For those people, right. And just for addition and subtraction. So it was a really small test. 250 times is small, but
yeah, well, it is when you start thinking about how many people there are,
right? And how many things that we think about.
Exactly,
we're not just thinking about addition and subtraction all the time.
Like the difference of the two math guys. There was one for the celebration of pi recently. One guy actually memorized pi out to 50,000 places.
I think it was 200,000.
200,000 places. That's right.
He memorized 200,000
places.
Numbers.
And he memorized it. There's another who is a savant.
Yeah, he's a savant.
Who doesn't...
A genius.
He's a genius. He does all this math, but he doesn't really do the math.
Yeah, he doesn't do the math.
It comes to him, he closes his eyes, he sees it, and he did like 5 hours of pi.
Yeah, he did 5 hours to 22,000 places, but he's not doing the math or memorizing the numbers. He just sees them in his head. And nobody can really explain what exactly that is, but that's a savant.
Yes, and we don't know how many people there are that do that, because usually when we run across somebody that talented, we beat it out of them.
Yeah.
We tell them what idiots they are. We ostracize them, put them in an institution. We don't know how many people actually have that level of talent all over the world,
right,
because we generally defeat it as quickly as possible, break their spirit, which is ludicrous. But I'm wondering, is one more valid than the other? Because one can memorize out that many places, and one can visualize out that many places. Is one any more gifted than the other?
I think one takes more work than the other.
We definitely.
Yeah, because the one who sees the images in his head, he's not really doing a lot of work, but I mean he's still a genius was he born with that, or did he have an accident or something?
There was a certain age where he realized that he was able to do that.
He just realized he was able to. So he had it all his whole life.
Right. The other kid...
There was another kid who
was in Chicago.
Who can remember the weather since he got hit in the head one day.
He got hit in the head with a baseball or softball.
Right. He can remember the weather on every single day since his accident. That's different.
Like, you could say March 21st, and he could tell you March 21st was a Thursday, and it was cold and rainy, and blah, 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 or whatever.
Yeah.
And he could do that. But that was a direct result of an highly impactful injury. But it brings up the fact that the brain is an incredible...
It's so
complex machine. And
ridiculously complex.
It's aesthetic, it's mechanistic, it's gorgeous, and it's complicated.
And don't they say that scientists say that we only use 10 to 13% of our brain?
Exactly.
That's incredible. And
I tend to think that there are certain politicians who actually use 2 to 3%. But that's just my personal opinion, and I'm not going to mention any names.
And there's people in India who use what? So 16 almost 20%,
yep.
and they can levitate themselves and levitate things.
Those guys who were like, there have been people who've reported they've seen these guys do this stuff.
People bend spoons with their brains, and they're using 16
telekinetics or whatever,
or even 20% of their brains, and that's just 20%.
And then, some of it's kind of parlor trick, but some of it isn't, which, kind of brings up like the prestige and things like that. It brings up the old Tesla, Nikolai Tesla. I mean, Tesla and Edison were in a scrap fest against each other at the turn of the 20th century about issues of electricity. Tesla picked the wrong horse and sided with the team that lost, and, Hitler and all those guys. So needless to say, he wasn't a big fan, and Edison was like, just stomp him out, whatever it takes, embrace my light bulb. So they had, quite... do some research, kids, if you ever want anything about Nikolai and Thomas Edison, because they had a really good time battling it out. But Tesla really did some work that kind of, preceded and predicted cell towers. I mean, he really did some amazing work in Colorado. Kind of scary, but amazing. And, you wonder what we could have done had we gone that direction at that time. And if he had had happier friends, a little bit more positive and diversity-centered and tolerant.
Upbeat.
But upbeat friends. But, it is interesting because it brings up points of how the brain works. How do we interpret things? Can we narrow things down to a certain path and assume that we can predict human nature or human response? Not so sure. I think it's just so much more complicated than that. We're all so unique beings. It would be nice if we could develop tools that were unique and just sensitive to our unique needs that would help improve our lives. And we've done that. But we have to be careful about how we do it. Yeah.
Well said. Okay, next up we have this is an interesting story. This is about a tiny rare owl that was spotted in Peru, in a Peru reserve. This is a long-whiskered owlet discovered in 1976, but has not actually been seen in nature. And now it has, and this is from MSNBC.
He's cute.
He's cute. He's
very
got
cute. I want one.
Orange
out
eyes.
In nature.
Yeah, orange eyes with a blue center, and he's about the size of your fist. Really tiny owl. An extremely rare species of tiny owl has been seen in the wild for the first time, the American Bird Conservancy said Thursday. The long-whiskered owlet, one of the world's smallest owls, was discovered in 1976. Researchers have caught a few specimens in nets after dark, but had not seen it in nature. It was spotted in the wild in February by researchers monitoring a private conservation area in Peru's northern jungle. The Conservancy said in a news release that investigators encountered the owlet 3 times during daylight hours and recorded its calls frequently at night. The group said the sighting is, quote, considered a holy grail of South American ornithology. The owl is so distinct that it has been named in its own genus. I'm going to try to pronounce this. Zenglau, meaning strange owl, due to the long wispy feathers around its reddish-orange eyes. The owl inhabits the dense undergrowth of highland forests in a remote region of Peru. Seeing the long whiskered owlet is a huge thrill, said David Gill of the Association of Andean Ecosystems, who was a member of the research team. Its population is estimated to be less than 1,000 birds, and possibly as few as 250. He said the species is threatened by the rapid destruction of its forest habitat and its small range.
What a surprise.
The researchers captured a bird in a mist net and later released it onto a tree branch, where it was photographed before disappearing into the night. Photos provided by the Conservancy show a bright-eyed bird not much bigger than the fist of the person holding it.
It's adorable.
It's adorable.
Get on the internet, take a look at this bird. It is so cute. And again, remember,
long whiskered
owls are excellent birds at controlling some of our favorite pests. So it's important to keep their habitat going and to make sure that they are around to take care of those pests, because they can become very pervasive, and then before you know it, we're out of balance again. So let's protect their forest and their preserve.
Yes, and
it's not that hard. It really isn't.
And some other animals.
Oh, and now we're in the Harry Potter corner. Any of you who've actually been out of a cave this week or haven't been away in an alternate universe now know that the Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows cover
is out. Both of them.
It's red.
It's red. Woo!
Yeah.
They're beautiful covers. We got U.S. covers and UK covers, Scholastic and Bloomsbury, respectively.
And he who shall not be named on the cover.
Yes.
You know what that means? Dead man walking!
Yes, that's been a little tradition, that saying that if they're on the cover, they're gonna die. Except for Harry. Except for Harry. we hope so. But now the fandom's gone nuts, and we got the cover, and it's the beginning of the end, and and the books coming out, and we reported last week, I think, about the Scholastic and Bloomsbury printing all the books, 12 million on forest-friendly paper, which is really cool. Which is really cool. Some people wish they had started a little earlier, but at least they're doing it now, and they're using a lot. So, but now we got one more story today. This is interesting. Speaking of Harry Potter 7. Guantanamo Bay inmates are waiting for this book, and this has been talked about before, not on this show, but it's been talked about that Guantanamo Bay, Cuba inmates really like Harry Potter,
which is interesting because it's not usually in languages that I would think that a lot of inmates could read. It's in Farsi.
It's in Farsi. Sometimes they have to wait for it, but some people don't like to wait for the Farsi version, and they just go get the English version and have people translate it. But this is interesting. Detainees at Guantanamo are avid Harry Potter readers and eagerly awaiting the next book in the series featuring the schoolboy wizard.
Now, see, if they'd been reading Harry Potter earlier, instead of out doing whatever they were doing, they wouldn't be in Gitmo.
No, exactly.
See, they should have been reading from the beginning. See?
While religion tops the reading list of the overwhelmingly Muslim detainees, Harry Potter was a big favorite, said the chief librarian at the U.S.-run prison in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. When you get to fiction, definitely Harry Potter, said the librarian, who would only give her first name Maggie. The camp has even pre-ordered the next installment, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is due out later this year. They're all waiting for number 7 to come out, she told reporters. The library staff offers the inmates, prescribed as enemy combatants posing a threat to the United States, a choice of books once a week. They take a variety of things out for the detainees to choose from. The library is one of the most popular things here. The library said surfing and fishing were the main interests for Australian inmate David Hicks, who pleaded guilty on Monday to a single charge of supporting terrorism. Hicks, who is expected to be sentenced later this week and eventually transferred back to his native Australia, was an avid reader who had built up his own collection of books during his 5-year detention. He almost has his own library. He has quite a few items that people from Australia sent him, she said. He had numerous books about saltwater fishing, as well as books about surfing in Australia and the Great Barrier Reef. About 380 detainees are held under elaborate security at the camp located at the remote U.S. naval base in southeast Cuba. Hicks is the only detainee to have been charged so far under newly created military tribunals overseen by the U.S. Defense Department. So, yeah, they're all Harry Potter fans.
Well, and here's the thing. Rather than waterboarding and these other forms of torture, just hold up book 7 and say, okay, tell me what I want to know, or you don't get the book.
You don't get the book.
You won't know. Everyone else in the world will find out before you will. Ha ha ha. And won't that be awful? See? You don't need to waterboard and torture and
Chinese
do all these
water
things.
torture.
Yeah, whatever that stuff's called. Just hang the book up over their head, out of reach, and say, look, just tell me what I want to know, and you can read the first 2 pages of the chapter.
Okay, I don't know if that's funny or not.
That's funny!
Oh,
get all your information out, and then you get it all over with, and then you can read the book. See? There are easier ways to get information other than expensive torture.
Well, I'm really glad that the inmates like Harry Potter, because it's
Keeps them out of trouble.
fantasy. It's escapist fantasy.
Keeps them out of trouble.
I'm sure that staying there is not pleasant, and they would love to escape. So they might as well escape into fantasy world, and a lot of people do that, whether they're inmates or not.
I think I'd use that to garner information.
Oh, that's Falcon.
Yep.
That's
Falcon says.
Falcon's a Scorpio, okay?
Exactly. So, ooh. Look at that picture of Aldi, but you can't see it. Just tell me what I need to know, and then you can have the book.
It's taunt them, yeah.
Hey, that beats waterboarding.
Oh, that's true, because you don't want them to drown.
Or think that they're drowning. I mean, come on.
Yeah. You think the Harry Potter thing would be enough? I think the prisoners would just say, like, oh, I don't care. I don't care what happens in the book. I'm not saying anything.
Come on. That's like saying you don't want to know that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's daddy. Come on. Everybody wants to know. They may not want to admit it. They may try to be cool. I think it would be an effective tool to garner additional information. That's my opinion.
Okay. And I guess we'll finish with a quote of the week. I don't know if I had that one last time. Let me think. Let's see what we got here. I'm going into my mental library of quotes, and here we go. Okay, this works. Here we go. This is one of my favorites. Books and ideas are the most effective weapons against intolerance and ignorance. Lyndon Johnson.
Wow. LBJ said that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I love it. The American Library Association uses that quote on buttons for Banned Books Week.
Ah.
Books and ideas are the most effective weapons against intolerance and ignorance. Mm-hmm.
We'll see. My method of torture is not nearly as bad.
Oh, yeah. Books are effective weapons against intolerance and ignorance.
Yeah, because if you read books...
You're saying the detainees are ignorant? And
No, I didn't say that. I did not say that. I'm saying that they can all be brought together, detainees and detainers alike, through the enlightenment of reading, which turns the ignorant intelligent, and through tolerance, which turns the intolerant tolerant. They can all get along. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
They can all get along through books.
Well, as always, you can contact us with your stories, your thoughts, your suggestions, your comments, anything at all at falcondove, FalconDove, at arayasimmons.com. AREYASIMMONS.com. FalconDove at arayasimmons.com. Send us your theories on a topic. If you've got a topic you want us to discuss, email it to us, and we'll discuss it on the show, because anything floats our boat.
That's right.
We love the feedback you've been giving to us. Thank you so much for
Get
all
me
your
good
feedback.
recipes. Send good recipes. Because
Recipes.
I'm always up for a good recipe.
Recipes. We
I
love
had the best Chinese food last week from my dear friend who has her little restaurant and her lovely daughters 3 blocks away, and she just rocked the house. It was kind of my late celebration of Chinese New Year. I did go see her on Chinese New Year, though, I think. I did go, but she rocks.
It's the year of the fire pig.
Fire pig. And she gave me the best recipe. So I'm always up for picking up new recipes from all over the world because it's cool. And I'll share mine with you if you're interested too. So.
Thank you. Yeah, so this was a shorter episode this week, but next week we'll probably be back to our lengthy selves.
Our insane normal selves.
Our insane normal selves. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
I am the Falcon.
And I am the Dove.
Have a great week. Have a blessed week. Peace out.
Peace out.